So thank you guys for being here. So our Blackboard Grade Center checkup is what we're doing today. And we're here to try to give you a succinct way of making sure that what your students are seeing in your grade center is correct, is what you want them to see, is going to be appropriate for when you're going to transfer your grades over into MyNCC. Soon, for almost the last time, okay, according to what we're hearing from our grand project leader, Deb Burek, about Workday, and maybe we won't have to play in cars much longer. And maybe too, an integration with Blackboard into Workday might mean that you won't have to manually input your grades in Workday like you do now. Because there's this little mark in your grade center, if you've never noticed, and it's usually on the total column, but it should be on the weighted total column if you're using it, that says external grade. Anybody ever see that? It's designed to automatically move over to an SIS so that you don't have to manually input grades, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. But maybe we will with Workday.
Just to clarify, Joe, so as of right now, grades have to be manually moved out of Blackboard into another system. Got it.
So Rick, this is Rick's first time at doing this, and the rest of you can make your comments to him if you want to about that process. But bottom line is, yeah, you've got to look at Blackboard Grade Center over here if you're using it fully, and then you got to have MyNCC open over here, and you got to say, okay, that was John Smith. Okay, we got to manually find John Smith over here. Okay, and we're going to write that in. So is it possible to make errors? Yeah.
Sure.
One thing that we don't like about manual input, right? So be very careful about that. I think, and maybe Vertel could speak to this, or Christine, that you can get it, so that you have them kind of lined up in order, so that you've got the people with either IDs in the grade center or last names in the grade center sorted similarly in MyNCC, so that it'll hopefully be easier for you to go write down both columns, if you will, and put in the correct grade.
Sure. Okay.
But that's not something I do because I don't teach a course. And I always say to the folks that are here that do teach, please chime in. Okay, so
Joe, I just want to give a quick, sorry, I hear an echo. I just want to give a quick update though. When you're looking at the grades, if you have to take that out of grade book, and if you have, like, some of ours are like 20 students in a class, if you look right after the student's name, there's a little chevron, and you can click on that and it'll allow you to remove all of the other names so that the only grade you're actually looking at is that particular student. And then you come back, you click on it again, and it'll open up all the list again, and you can go down. I've done that and I've suggested that to all the adjuncts that I work with, because that way you're clearly only looking at Jane Doe's grades, as opposed to when you're looking at it and you start shifting it to the left or the right. Sometimes that bar on the bottom is not very user friendly, and I know we've all complained to you, Joe, and there's nothing we can do about it, but it's not really user friendly, and especially if you have 20 students and you have to scroll down. So my suggestion was always, go to the last name, use the little chevron, and then just identify that particular student's, so you can look at their grade specifically. It just makes it a little bit easier, especially if you have to, transfer it maybe to another website or to another sheet or what have you.
Okay, good idea.
Ditto what Vertel put in the chat. That is a great tip. And maybe we'll just start there since we're on that topic. So what I want to say is there's a lot of things that you can do to the grade center, from the grade center, to help you work within it. And I don't know how many people are aware of those things, but one thing is right here, and I'm hoping you can all see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, the top right, you can pop out the grade center so that it takes up more of your desktop and gives you a little bit more real estate for those problems that Christine mentioned. For instance, getting around the grade center can be somewhat wonky, right? All right, and we can put it back together by clicking on that marker again, and it brings it back into the frame of the Blackboard course. Another thing that can be helpful is switching the type of view of the full grade center. So you can turn on screen reader mode, okay? And this presents a little bit more like a real Excel spreadsheet, and it's a little bit more static. And watch what happens when I just scroll across. Notice it doesn't jump around like that other view.
That's pretty
Okay,
sweet.
so it's a little bit more stable because it's meant for a screen reader to be able to access it for someone that would need one with that type of accommodation. All right, so that's another thing to keep in mind. And then I'm going to show what Christine mentioned. So any particular person, if you want to, you can click on the chevron next to their name and see where it says hide other rows. And then all you see is that person, and you can work across the row for that person. Of course, you'll probably have, you know, this running total or running weighted total as your score. This is the marker I was mentioning about the external grade, and you can move that to any column, but it has to be on a column all the time in Blackboard, even though we don't really use it. And putting it here on the running weighted total would be a good thing. I have to tell you that, believe it or not, we do have this connection with Starfish and the Grade Center. And supposedly, I'm not sure if it's working properly right now because we did have a problem with it a little while ago. The grades are supposed to be dumped into Starfish. And the main grade that gets dumped into Starfish is whatever comes off of this external grade column. So if you leave it here, then what goes into Starfish is this 124. But if you move this external grade flag over to running weighted total, that's what goes over into Starfish.
What should it be, Joe? The running weighted total?
Well, if you're using running weighted total, not everybody does, Christine. But if you're using it, you probably should make that your external grade. And all you have to do to make a column your external grade, click on the chevron and right here, set as external grade. Notice that it came over here now.
All right.
Left
So
here.
there's only one, like, so if you take it off the running total and you move
Yes.
it into that running weighted total,
Right.
then it just negates the other one, correct?
Correct.
It takes it
Yeah.
off. Okay. Okay.
Right. And it has no impact whatsoever on your students, doesn't have real impact on you. So right now, if this course were going over to Starfish, what would be on the Starfish display would be this score, not this score.
Right.
You do get details in Starfish too, but the general display, the summary display, shows this running weighted total or wherever the external grade is marked. Okay. All right, now to bring back everybody, all you do is go back here and simply hit show all rows. And it brings back the entire grade.
Joe, could I say one more thing about
Please.
that? So in our department, in the education department, we have a lot of students that sometimes start taking the course and then they withdraw. And I'm sure that's others as well, or sometimes they are withdrawn. And when I'm trying to look at an overall picture of what some of the students, like where are they all missing and stuff like that, and I want to take out those students that have been withdrawn, you can also use that same chevron that we used, and you can actually hide that row. So in other words, if that student you're clicking on, you can hide that if they're no longer in your class because they've been withdrawn or whatever. And I've used that, but I never know how to unhide it after I hide it. Like, do they unhide every time I come back? That was my question.
I can't remember because I'm glad you pointed it out that it's right here in this context menu. This is typically not where I would do it. Okay? Where I would do it and where you would unhide somebody, similar to, hey, if you hide a column here in the Grade Center, can you unhide it here? No. Where do you have to go? You have to go to manage. Column organization, right? Yep. Well, the same thing. Similarly, your rows have this manageability right here under the manage function or feature tool here. So this is, instead of your columns, it's your rows.
I got you.
And you know, you could easily just designate somebody right here and hide them. And then if you did hide them, let's just go ahead and do that, okay? Now, when you come back to the full grade center, I got to move stuff out of the way so I can get there. When you come back to the full center, you really couldn't tell, but they're not here anymore. And if you want to go and make sure that they come back, you got to go back to row visibility. And then you got to come here and say, hey, show them now again and submit that.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes those students that are hanging in there that are not really participating anymore, to coin your phrase, they take up a lot of real estate sometimes, and I have to scroll through, and I'm like, it's frustrating, you know, when you're trying to do that. So thank you for showing me that. I was wondering.
You're welcome. And typically, I don't know if either Vertel or Rick has this in their course, but if, let's just say this, Kim was dropped, or but they're still in the course, because we don't take people completely out of the courses. They would probably show up here with one of those circles with a line through it, kind of indicating to you that they're not available anymore.
Yeah.
But they still show up on the row, and that's what Christina is saying. You can actually get rid of them or hide their display in the grade center for purposes of continuing to work on the folks only that are really active in the course. All right. Any other questions about that?
Thank you for showing me that other spot.
Administratively, how does Blackboard know when a student withdraws? In other words, I see that with the circle and the slash through it, and then I know a student dropped.
Right.
But how does that get to Blackboard?
Okay. So as well, you would see things in the user area too, Vertel, right? So if I bring up a new tab here and I open up the user area, any one of these folks could be either available or not available, all right? They become unavailable automatically when either you say to CARS that they're not participating anymore. That's that attendance report after whatever, 2 or 3 weeks, right? Or you withdraw them later on, or they withdraw themselves. They do that through CARS. You do it through CARS. And CARS, like the rest of the integration with Blackboard, updates courses, it updates users, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens when somebody is pulled out of a course for some reason, whether they drop or they get withdrawn or et cetera, they are flagged in CARS. That flag is a specific flag which says, we're not going to delete them from Blackboard. We're only going to make them unavailable. Because in the past, a long time ago, when we first started the integration with CARS, we were deleting them, and then people wanted to come back, and it's like, oops, anything they did is gone if we delete them. So we only make them unavailable. So it's up to you guys then to say, hey, I don't want to see them. Okay, they're in my course, they're unavailable, and you can't delete them completely because that's something we take away from you. But you can, of course, control the display of them, and that's where you would have that capability in various places to do so. Does that answer your question there, girl?
Yeah, you know why? I was just wondering if I could rely on that, as an official, the person is no longer in the course. So now I know I can rely on that.
You should be able to. You may see some lag in time between CARS and Blackboard, or between when you do your attendance report. Sometimes the records office doesn't get around to actually officially doing those attendance, non-attendance things for a couple of days. So you may say or report that your student isn't attending and you want them dropped, but you'll still see them in Blackboard for a while until that drop is gone through officially in records and then made it to an overnight process where it gets into Blackboard. So sometimes you'll see a time lag. But generally speaking, I wouldn't say that you should say your official record is Blackboard. Always go back to your CARS roster to be sure. But for the most part, it is working very, very well. I mean, you may see a glitch here or there where something wasn't done properly in records, but you should rely on your MyNCC roster and your MyNCC grades. They're still the official piece until we get to work day. Okay. All
Thank
right,
you.
good questions. What else was I going to do here? Let's just go back here. Okay, I was going to show you one other thing in the grade center area. Always remember that if you don't want to work actively here, you could download your grade center into an Excel spreadsheet and print it off and work off of a print off. Okay, that's one thing that you could do while you're inputting your grades, for instance, your final grades into my NCC. The other thing that you can do is you can create reports. And this report can be based on individual users or all users, and you can decide which columns you want. So if you only want your total column, your weighted total column, you can get a report of all your students and just the weighted total column and print that out and work off of that when you're inputting grades too.
Comes about for the hose. I got him a squirter too,
Okay,
you know, for the hose.
yeah.
Squirt.
All right, I'll take a walk back and see.
Give me a
I
second
mean,
here.
I've been in for a while. I've been taking care of stuff. I should have gone back.
See, okay. Oh, I don't know who that was, but I was going to try to mute them. All right. So let's jump from here now. Good questions, working a little bit backwards, but I'm glad because I want to address, individual concerns as much as possible. All right. So I realize this says grading students online can't be easier, blah, blah, blah. But this was from a session we did in August, and it has some material that I want to work with. Basically, want you to be aware, and I'll share this with you if you want. Let me do that right now. Control C, I'll put it in the chat. And there it is. Basically, I want you to be aware of the fact that you've got some grade center help right here. And we are going to talk about weighting and the categories, planning your grade center if you've never used this. And this one over here called weighting grade.
Only yard, that's all.
Okay.
Only yard, not the wall.
So let's just take a look real quick at the information that's available to you directly in Blackboard. All right. I always like to start with this because you don't always have me and Sandy and Sarah and Lauren at your disposal. So helping those who help themselves is what is going to make you get your answers quickly. And this Blackboard Grade Center area, if I just choose this grading summary page, you'll see that it talks about a lot of stuff here and gives you different information specifically about grading that you can have at your disposal 24/7. If you want to look specifically at weighting, putting that right in the search bar, and it creates a search term and gives me some things. So we can see calculate grades, and notice that one of the things on this page is about weighted columns, and you can use this in a form of reference. Let me go back to the Padlet, for instance, and I think that that's what this is right here. Let me just double check. Yeah, this is going to take us right away to weighted columns. And we're going to go through this. If you are an expert at it already, add your 2 cents, please, while we go through it. And if you have not done this too much, then hopefully you'll get something out of it. But this is where you want to come as one of your points of reference. I always say this too. There's many, many, many good tutorials, documents, etc. out there on the web. Just do a Google search for Blackboard weighted totals, and you'll find some really, really great other institutions that have put their stuff out there, and you'll find some really great materials to help you do this. But the concept in general is we want to make this weighted column show the result of the student's work based upon what you told them they were going to be required to do and how their grade was going to be calculated, which many of you should have done in the syllabus. I don't mean to say it that way, but I'm pretty sure almost everybody shows something in their syllabus about how their grade is calculated. Am I right? Yeah. So the idea is that whatever you're putting in your syllabus should kind of match what you're doing with this weighted column. Now, do you have to use the weighted column? No, absolutely not. But we find that it provides the calculation for you. We find that if you completely use the Grade Center and put all your gradable items in the Grade Center, your students are going to love you. It's going to give you an opportunity to throw the feedback in, and they're going to always know where they are at every junction of the course at any point in time.
Yeah.
If you use this running weighted total. And of course, you do need to make sure that they understand that concept. That's probably the biggest thing that you have to do as an instructor and explaining their grade in Blackboard, is that they need to understand that their grade is only reflective of what they've done. Okay? If you're using a running total, and by default, both the total column in the Grade Center and the weighted total column are running totals. You can turn that off if you want to, but that's your choice. It depends on how you like to explain this to your students. But if it's a running total, it's only going to grab and calculate the scores that are there in the individual columns. So if there's no score there, if there is a dash, it won't even include that as the denominator of the calculated totals. Okay? Only the stuff that the students have done. That said, it's very important for you as an instructor, if they haven't done something and it's past due, it behooves you to put a grade in there so that they understand that it reflects a 0 and is included in their weighted total calculation at any point in time that they look at it. Now, you can always go back in and change that and take the 0 out and put a real grade in should they decide to submit something afterwards and you accept it and blah, 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 blah. But if you don't put a 0, if you leave dashes in, that weighted total calculation won't be correct. Keep that in mind. All right. So the denominator of your weighted total column is always every one of the columns in your Grade Center that you intend to use in the calculated totals. So this tells you.
Question, Joe?
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay. Bertel, did you have a question?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay.
Joe, now, I don't know if I'm going off topic, but is there a way for me next to every assessment that's graded to require the student to look at my feedback?
No. Nope.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't know how fortunate or unfortunate that is, but the best thing I can say to you about that, Bertel, is when you're doing some type of orientation in the beginning of the course, make sure you make mention of where they can find that feedback. Of course, there's information in Blackboard Help about that too, both for you and for the students, and try to get them dialed in on that as early as possible. Yeah. But that really becomes more of a, I suppose, a marketing thing where you can always probably ring that home to them on a regular basis, in a polite way. What, didn't you see my feedback? It's right here, and show them how to get to it, that kind of thing. But
And is there any way I can track whether they went to the feedback?
No.
Okay.
Sorry about that. There are a lot of places to track stuff, but that's not one of them. Okay, so I just want you to realize that it's all here. Notice that it's relating the points relative to the types of things that you might have in your course. And you can't do a total weighted column until you actually have each and every one. I shouldn't say that. You can start it, but you can't put anything into the total weighted column formula until you actually have it as a Grade Center column in the Grade Center as a whole. And I'll explain that when we get to it, okay? But here you can see it's going to do its calculations based on some of the material that's in here. You can review that at your leisure. And I think what's good to know is that the the weighting can be done either based on the individual columns or on categories. It's probably also safe to say that most of the time, what's in your syllabus is kind of based on categories. Now that may be one item. Let's just say you have a final paper that might stand alone and you might not put that into a category. That's fine because you can mix and match. Your weighted total can be based on just categories, just columns, or a combination of the two. But suffice it to say, let's just say you're using Connect and you have Connect assignments on the Connect dashboard, that learning management system that's out there, and they're going to do 15 homework assignments in there. And you have a column for each one of those 15 homework assignments. Well, you'll probably will put them all into a category called Connect Homework. And then that category can be weighted as 15% of their grade collectively. And then it's probably a good idea to do your weighting based upon that category for that category of gradable items. And this is what we're going to look at directly in the course, where you're actually building out this formula by virtue of columns and or categories, coming up to a total weight, if possible, not if possible, eventually of 100%. That's why I was saying, even if you don't have your grade center built out completely, you can still start this process. But of course, it's going to be based on less than 100% until you get your grade center built out completely. And then there's more information down here as you go. All right, I just want you to be aware that that's where this is. As mentioned, there's a lot of other items like out there in the world. For instance, this one from University of Hartford. All right, this is about categories. So if you don't know how to create a category of your own, you'll find that in this resource. And also, if you want to change the categories that are in there by default in Blackboard, you're welcome to do so. Okay, but some already exist in your courses. That's a good reference piece as well. All right. Now, since I mentioned that basically the essence of your total weighted column comes from your syllabus and the way you're telling your students they're going to be graded, this sheet right here, planning your grade center, may be very helpful to you. Obviously not so helpful today because it's a little late in the game, but it might be helpful to you for spring 21 to start indicating, hey, what are your items one by one that you want to grade? Some of them will be created automatically because you're making it an assignment or a graded discussion board inside of Blackboard, but some of them might be manual columns because let's say you actually meet, for an hour and 15 minutes once a week synchronously, you might want to have an attendance one or something like that. So feel free to use that. But right here, you see, you can actually, you put a category for each one of those items. And then you may have 5 categories of things, and then you can weight based upon categories. You have numbers of points, percentage of grade, and if it's going to be a grade center calculated item or not. So this might be a good tool for you to utilize just as a basis of, coming up to what should be in your grade center before you actually putting stuff in there. That's entirely up to you. It's a tool that you could use. Then the essence would be this last thing down here generally should probably look very much like what you're showing your students in your syllabus. Oh, here's your homework, and that's 15%. Oh, here are your 3 tests, and that's 25%. And here's a paper, and that's 25%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for a total of 100%. And this will, again, equate to what you're doing in that weighted total formula in the weighted total column. All right, hope that can be helpful. And one other way of looking at this is right here using this. Oh, I beg your pardon. That was the wrong thing. Actually, I think I have that set up on another screen here. Hang on a second. Yeah, right here. Okay. Can everybody see this? This is another worksheet that you could use if you want to as well. I think that first one I just showed you would be like real raw planning from the lowest level. If you want to skip that kind of raw planning, you can come here and just say, hey, what are your categories? What are your percentages? Knowing that you want to check the categories in your column organization that you have in Blackboard Grade Center, okay? Where your assignments are coming from. When you look at column organization, you can actually see the category that it's in there. And then knowing what you want to do with each one of those individual items, and then eventually doing the actual weighting process right here with the weighted total column. All right, just another reference point, and I'll make sure that if it's not in this Padlet, that it gets into this Padlet. Sorry about that. Okay. So let's go to our course again. And let's just take a quick look at the things that make up or are a part of the weighted total calculation. And they would be categories and columns, okay? So if you ever needed to check your categories, you can click on Manage Categories, and you can actually see here what categories you have on the left-hand side. If you need to delete or add one, you certainly can. Here's the Create Category button. And whatever you've added to particular categories shows up over here on the right. These are the items in the Grade Center that have been added to a particular category. So you can utilize this as a reference point, or if something doesn't seem to be working, come back here and make sure that you have the item in the right category, or that it's in the category at all, or that the category even exists. Okay, and then going back to the full Grade Center, looking at column organization. And here's where you see every item that you've put into your Grade Center, and notice the third column here, category, right? You can see that I've got a number of different types of categories, and that these categories can and are used in the weighted column calculation, right? Keep in mind that everything, I know this is really ridiculous with the number of items that are in here because we utilize this as a demo course, but every item that is in the Grade Center and that you want to be included in calculations, that's a spot that you can check on every Grade Center column. Then, and if it has points, it will and should be part of the weighted total calculation. And remember, over on the right-hand side, you can see any point values for any one of your graded columns. Okay, so you'll use this. And if you had to change the category here, you can do that, right? Let's just say this memoir wasn't an assignment, but it was a paper or something else, or a discussion. Once you check it off, you can go to the top or the bottom. Obviously, I took the long road home, and you can change category. We can change it to, I'm just going to make it a discussion. Okay. Once you do that, you have to submit that change. It's not automatic. And now that, got to go back in there, go back to column organization, and that item memoir now has become discussion instead of assignment. Okay. So we're back at our full Grade Center. Our running total is what we're concerned about here, right? So we want to make sure that that calculation is set up properly. We go to the edit column information. There's a number of things in here that are typical to editing your columns, like the name. Here's some information, and you can modify this information if you want to, but if you didn't know this, both the running weighted total and the total column are in everybody's Grade Center by default. They're all already in there, but you can create your own if you want to. You can change how you want this displayed to you primarily, or to you secondarily The secondary display, your students do not see. They only see the primary display. Most people use this as a percentage because that's what students understand. Not a bad idea for you to add possibly a score here as well, but you get an idea of the total points then at least. And then we get to the big part, which is right here. Here's where you are programming this column to do all the nasty, dirty work for you. Now, every column that's in your grade center will be listed over here. I can scroll down, and you saw in my column organization, there is a heck of a lot of items in here. And any column that I want, I mentioned that you might have a non-categorical column, like a final paper, for instance. Let's just say this memoir was worth 40% of the student's grade. I can just highlight this and hit this chevron over here to bring it over into my selected columns area, and it'll show up down here at the bottom. Okay. If I don't want that, I just hit the red X here and it deletes it. But if you've done your job by categorizing and you have everything in categories, you're probably going to pick the categories over here out of this list to drop over into the actual selected columns. Once again, you would just pick the item, click this arrow, and it jumps in here. Okay, now that it's in here, here's where you go by either one of those mapping documents that I showed you, or by your syllabus. Hey, you have a research project on your syllabus and you're telling your students it's worth 20%. Hey, you just drop that number right in here and boom, it's there. And then you've got labs and you might have 4 or 5 of them and you drop in a 40%. Now, if your labs, if you've got, let's say you got 4 of them, and you're basically saying that they have equal weight across the board, then each one of them is basically going to be worth 10%. But this is doing that work for you. You don't have to worry about it. Right? If for some reason the first 2 were worth 5% and the last 2 were worth 20%, then you change this to proportional and you change the point value on each one of those accordingly. That's how that works out. If you have multiple items in a category, but they're not all the same weight, okay? Either that, or you could create 2 lab categories, like lab 1, they're the 5%ers, and lab 2s, which are the 20%ers, however you want to do it. But if you said that all of your labs were, and most people do things equally, but you may have a special situation. But if you did have to break it down, you would go back to those lab columns and say, lab 1, lab 2, lab 3, lab 4. Well, lab 1 and 2, those guys are worth 10 points. But labs 3 and 4, those guys are worth 20 points each. And then come here and say proportionally, so it'll put more weight on the ones that are 20 points than the ones that are 10 points. Okay? All right. And then you have a special exam or multiple exams, and there could be 3 of them at 5 points each, whatever. Then you have a final exam at 20 points, et cetera. You get the idea. The bottom line here is to get to this total weight of 100%, right? And if you have every category represented and every grade column in a category, voila, that total calculation should work the way it's supposed to. Notice here is where you indicate whether or not you want it to be a running total or not. Again, the default is yes. And then whatever changes you make, you submit. And here we now have some type of running weighted total. Not sure exactly why we're not seeing anything in here. I have a feeling it has something to do with the fact that some of these items aren't included in those calculations. I didn't put memoir in there, did I? So let me go back here real quick, just so you can see it work. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to change something by, let's see, I'm going to add memoir. And I'm going to make research project 19%. And then I'm going to go down to memoir and just make it 1% so I can get back to my total of 100%. And I'm going to put a score in here for this person of 50. And notice that it automatically does put something into the running weighted total. You're not seeing anything here probably because anything where there's actually a grade like this 10 and this 50 and this 4 over here, it's probably not included in that calculation that we had previously created over there in the running weighted total column, edit column calculation process. All right, is this clear as mud?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let me go back to the Padlet. See if there was anything else I wanted to point out here. I don't really think so. And let me just see if there were any other items I was going to show you. Yeah, this is another document. Again, this is probably a little bit more low-level planning, like right from the get-go planning. I think this is something, again, as you're thinking about next semester, again, you don't have to use that weighted total column. I know a lot of people that just put scores on each of their grade columns that are really, really easy to calculate into percentages of 100. So like that said, let's just say you make your entire total points for your grade center equal 1,000. And then, you know, each of your exams, you have 4 of them, they each are 100. So that would be 400 points out of 1,000 goes into your exams. So that would kind of give you a weighting of 40% for your total grade, right? Some people do it that way. They don't have to use a total weighted column. But if you use the total weighted column, the score, the points, and the types of things that you can quickly add or subtract as your gradable objects in your course are irrelevant. You can make them totally unrelated to anything. Like you could have something that has 7.5 points, which is kind of meaningless, but it's irrelevant because the weight you put on that is what's going to matter, and it's going to come out in that weighted total column correctly for you and your students. All right, I'll make sure that you have a copy of this too, if it means anything to anybody. But it's more, I think, for a little bit of planning for the future rather than something you would be thinking about today for fall 21 or fall 20. So any particular questions that you have about your grade center, or if you want, we can bring up one of your grade centers if you have a particular question, and we could look at it right now while we still have a few more minutes left. Crickets. I'll stop sharing for a second so that we could share each other. Rick, anything from your perspective, being that you're relatively new to this whole process?
No, I just got to spend. I did enter some of the grades. I need to go through there. I probably got to add a few columns. Okay. I got to sort through that and figure that out.
Yep.
But
bottom line is, even if you have a total column, it's a good idea for that total column to reflect the total point value that your students are expecting to have possibly achieved in your course.
Okay.
Okay. And going back to that simple idea of 1,000 points, if you only have 10 items that your students are being graded on, Rick, and they're each worth 100 points, it's kind of obvious. But if you don't put them in your grade center, right, your students will never see that total of 1,000 that they got, right?
I understand. Okay.
So the more information you put in your grade center, the more information that your students have at their fingertips, and they can come back to you and say, Instructor Wolf, why do I have a blah, 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 blah?
Understand.
You can be very confident about, well, go in your grade. For them, it's called a grade book. Go into your grade book. You'll see those 10 columns. They see it as 10 rows in the grade book. And, look at those items. Are there things you didn't do that you don't have any points for? Well, that's why.
Agreed.
Right. Anything to add, Vertel, from your very veteran perspective?
That's limited veteran perspective.
No. Yeah. Okay, good. And
Joe,
Kim, are you
just-
with us? Go
I
ahead.
am with you, even though you can't see me. I'm with all of you.
Okay.
I am.
Any particular questions?
I sent two kind of stupid ones in already.
Oh, I'm
Yeah, you
sorry.
can read them. They're there. They're
When
probably.
would I want to wait
before
an
I got there.
assignment? Okay, sure. Of course you can come back in tonight. Go right ahead. You can wait as soon as you create an assignment in Blackboard, whether it's a dynamic one using the Blackboard assignment feature or a static one where you've just told them, go out to your backyard and collect 5 leaves and tell me what they are. That might be a manual column that you put in the grade center just to grade that, right? So those columns are created in the grade center either by you manually or by using one of the graded processes in Blackboard. A graded discussion board, a graded wiki, a graded journal, a graded test, a graded assignment. All right.
Okay.
So any of those that are in there, once they get into the grade center, you're welcome to go over to the total weighted column and add that one in if it's not already in there.
Okay. See, I'm thinking specifically about, I had them do college journals, do an assignment with that for about 10 minutes each. Not always every class time, but a couple throughout the semester. And I said to somebody else in the English department, I said, how do I grade these or what do I do? And she said, did you weight them? And I said, I didn't say to her, but I thought, no. She said, you could also give them as extra credit, which I like that idea a lot. That really rewards the ones that did it. And I made it clear to my students that I wanted them to, I said, send me the file, send me your file today. I said, I don't want you to add to it. I said, whatever you have, just send it to me.
Okay.
And then I said, and then you may have a chance of getting some extra credit. So I decided to not weight it and just do it that way and look and see what they did, how much they did, how much they thought about what they were doing. So that was.
Yeah. And this is fine. I mean, going back to whatever you used to do, if you were just a classroom instructor, I don't mean to say it just, but it's a whole new world today. And you may not have used any particular kind of grading concept besides just a book that you wrote things into that gave you a running total of what students were doing based upon what they accomplished or what you are watching them do, whether it be class participation, whether it be papers that they gave you in person, and you've jotted some things down about that. However you came up with your grade before is still valid today. What we are recommending, though, especially in the world that we live in today, is as much of that you can put into Blackboard, the better it's going to be for both you and your students.
I have used the Blackboard gradebook for everything.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And I have categories for everything. I have points for everything. So in that way, I've really used Blackboard. It's very helpful. And then students can quickly see their grades.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I've used it. And
right.
Yeah.
Going back to, remember I made a comment about making sure you fill in each and every grade cell, no dashes, okay? So I think one thing that really is effective is, it's if you don't want to do it the day something's due, that's fine, give them a couple of days or something like that. But you're not doing them a favor, you're not doing yourself a favor by leaving it blank, because what's happening is you may not be getting their attention that they need to still do something, even though you've made an announcement about it. They see it in their course homepage if you've used a due date and all that kind of stuff. So nothing is much more impactful than them going into their My Grades and seeing a 0, right?
Right.
Wait a minute, why did I get a 0 here? Well, did you submit something? And then, you know, instead of you hounding them, they come to you and say, oh, could I have another chance to do that? And then you can say yes or no and change the grade. So it's not a bad idea to keep your grades really updated, you know, within the course of whatever due dates you have established.
Right.
It's helpful to you and it's helpful to the students. Okay.
I
Vertel,
appreciate
did you have a remark you wanted to make?
Just a question. Do I have the ability to student view the student's gradebook?
Okay. Yes and no. All right. So if you use the student preview, Vertel, and I suggest this to people, and I did it during our summer sessions when we wanted to show the impact of something that was done through an assignment process by a student. So you can go into student preview, Vertel, and you can keep that student preview for yourself for the entire semester. You just have to make sure to do that every time you go in and out of there. Okay. That said, feel free to do one of your assignments. Feel free to do a discussion board. Feel free to do whatever. And then when you're in there as student preview, you click on my grades, you have access to it then, and you get to see what your grades are as Vertel Martin student preview user, right? That's one way. The other way is this. Let's get back to that course. Remember I said about reports, right? So we can create a report which kind of looks like that student preview. So we have to give it a name, blah, blah, blah. It'll bark at us if we don't give it a name. And let's just select a user and we'll select Lauren student. And you get to decide what demographic information. We'll do blah, blah, blah columns and leave it at that. And then we'll submit that. And we'll see, we get a report. This report, believe it or not, Vertel, looks very much like my grades, okay? Because it's vertical rather than horizontal, and that's the way your students see it. So basically, they're gonna see, this is what they're gonna see first, running weighted total when they go in my grades, then this, and then the individual items. And over on the right-hand side here, they're gonna see, you know, what they got for that item. You don't see that you've put feedback here, but they would see that in my grades, the feedback. This is kind of what they see, a report. Okay. Hope that helped. All right.
Yeah.
And Mr. Wolf had asked about manual columns. Right here, create a column and you can call it whatever you want. Homework one.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And then you put a description in here. You have to give it some kind of points, whether it be score. Here's that category. We'll
Yep.
call it an assignment.
Okay.
Give it some kind of points, 10 points. It's a good idea to give it a due date, blah, blah, blah. So it shows up for them. You submit that. And where does it go? Come on, Rick, you know where
To
it
the,
goes.
all the way to the right.
Oh, no, wait,
That I remember that. Yeah. Okay.
and here it is. Okay. And you have to manually enter stuff here because if you don't,
Sure.
it's not coming automatically from anywhere else.
Sure. I know we talked about it in the summertime. I just forgot how to do it. So that's why I thought I'd ask again. Just to, as a connection to that question. So how do I, if there's an existing column in the grading center, which is from a legacy, if you will, and I might have made some changes to the course, how do I get, I mean, I know there's a delete button on a column, but if is that going to break something else that's part of, if it's part of the, when the assignment was set up, there's a check mark somewhere, it goes into grade, where it goes, is it going to break something if I just delete it from here, from the grade center?
Okay.
Break some,
Manual grades are not connected in any way to anything else in Blackboard.
well, I
And there's
understand.
no problem deleting them and see that there is a delete option, right?
But what about
Okay.
something was, let's say was created, probably created in the part of Blackboard somewhere, and I go
Very
and
good.
just delete. That's my question. Maybe it's,
So you
What-
see this one here?
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go
Yep.
here.
Yep, I
You
saw
see
that.
delete?
Oh,
You see
sorry. Go
delete?
ahead.
Where's delete?
Oh,
Not there?
okay. I see. Okay, good point. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
So you would literally have to go to the content area where this is located.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Delete
Okay.
that assignment.
Okay.
And then it will ask you if you want to delete the column here in the grade center or not. Okay.
But so,
Right.
so just one clarification, Joe. So that if I do see the delete option there in that column, means it's not linked some other place in Blackboard.
That's
Good.
correct.
Okay, okay. And if it is linked, then the option's not there to delete. Okay, got it.
Correct.
I feel more comfortable now. Thank you. Okay.
Right. And if you're not sure about something with this, go ahead and just hide it. Let me just say something about hiding and showing columns.
Yeah.
There's two hiding, okay? Here it says hide from instructor view. As
Right.
soon as you do that, it takes it out of your grade center or hides it from your grade center view. It does not hide it from the students though, okay? So if you hide it from your view, your students still see it. In order for you to hide it from your students, you have to now go back to manage column organization, unhide it there, come back to here and say hide from students.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
then you'll see that mark if it's hidden from students.
Okay. Okay.
So
all right.
going back to that whole point is if you're not sure, just hide it. Hide it from them, hide it from you, and then you can get rid of it later on.
Very good.
All right.
All right.
So Turkey Joe doesn't have anything to say except happy Thanksgiving to you
Thank you.
all.
Well, thank you. Happy
Same to
Thanksgiving.
you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right.
You too,
Thanks for being
everyone
here.
else. Sarah, thank you. Have a great
you.
holiday.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
Good holiday.
Be
Bye-bye.
safe, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.